Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of KRAD COVID Readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido. This time around, as you can see by the shirt, I'm going to do something involving Star Trek and also involving Klingons. I've written quite a bit of Klingon fiction over the years, and this time I'm going to be reading you one of the short stories I've written that involves the Klingons. It also involves the Captain's Table. Back in 1998, Dean Wesley Smith and John Ordover created the Captain's Table, which is a bar that only ship captains, can enter. It has entrances all over the galaxy, all over the universe. People from different times and spaces can come in. And it was inspired by a number of different fictional bars where people come in and tell stories. The Tales of the White Hart, Callahan's Crosstime Saloon. White Hart was the main inspiration for Dean and John, but there have been plenty of others as well. Of course, all of us are just riffing on Chaucer when we do this. But our own little science fictional Canterbury Tales were done in several novels, 6 novels that were done in 1998, which featured James Kirk and Sulu, Catherine Janeway, Jean-Luc Picard, Benjamin Sisko, Mackenzie Calhoun, and Christopher Pike. After 1998, several new captains were established in the Star Trek universe. There was Jonathan Archer of the Earthship Enterprise in the TV show Enterprise. In the post-finale novels that were done for both Deep Space Nine and Voyager, the characters of Kira Nerys and Chakotay were both promoted to captain and became, captains as well. And the character of Elizabeth Shelby, who originally appeared in The Best of Both Worlds and is also one of the characters in the New Frontier series, got promoted to captain and got her own ship. And who else did we have? And then in one of the novels, in Serpents Among the Ruins, one of the Lost Era novels, it was established that Demora Sulu, the daughter of Hikaru Sulu, also became a ship captain, and she became captain of the USS Enterprise B. In addition to that, there were a couple of prose-only series that were started. There was the Titan series, which stars Captain William Riker, who was made a captain in the 2002 movie Star Trek Nemesis. There was also the Stargazer series, which featured Picard's first command. There's the Starfleet Corps of Engineers series, which is about engineers, and their captain was a guy named David Gold. And then I did a series taking place on the I.K.S. Gorkon, which features Captain Klag, a character first introduced on Next Generation's A Matter of Honor. So I wrote Klag's story, and it's called loDnI'pu, vavpu, which I pronounced horribly, I'm sure. It's Klingon for fathers and brothers. Another warnog. Wiping his hand on the apron he always wore, Cap brushed a lock of unruly white hair out of his eyes. That was your 10th warnog, Klag. 11th, actually, Klag snorted. If this were truly the Klingon tavern that it appears to be, you would not be keeping track. Cap smiled wryly. Each captain who came through the establishment's doors saw his or her own ideal watering hole, which in Klag's case meant a public house within the Klingon Empire. The wooden walls covered with various edged weapons, as well as the heads of Trigaks, Klongats, Targs, and other game animals. Klag continued. And I'm still quite sober, as your transparent lie was obviously designed to test, so kindly give me another. I'm not nearly drunk enough yet. Maybe, maybe not. But you know the rules, Klag. A Boslik freighter captain muttered, like a Klingon ever follows the rules. Slamming a fist into the bar, Klag whirled on the Boslik. Klingons value the power of story far more than your mongrel race, woman! She smiled coyly. Prove it. Tell us a story. Oh no, muttered a Bajoran solar sailboat master. Every time I come in here, it's another Klingon story. They're always about fighting and killing and honor. A human timeship captain chuckled. They aren't all like that, just the ones they tell in bars. Sneering, a Romulan outpost commander said, Do Klingons ever do anything other than tell stories in bars? Another Klingon captain, sitting at the far end of the bar from Klag, said, Yes, sometimes we defeat Romulans in battle. Doesn't matter, Cap said before the Romulan could reply to the other Klingon's insult. Only rule in this place is that everyone who comes in tells a story. And Klag's been here for 11 warnogs and several stories. It's his turn. Klag let out a long breath. that was half sigh and half snort. Very well. I will tell you all a tale. He gave the Bajoran a sharp look. It is a tale of fighting, a tale of killing, and a tale of honor. During the Dominion War, I served on the I.K.S. Pike as first officer to an honorless Ptak named Kargon. At the Marcon system, oh no, the human timeship captain said, not that story again. You told that story last time you were in here, the Chalnoth killship captain said with a snarl. A Ferengi daemon added, and the time before that. We've all heard it 1,000 times, a Telspong shipmaster said. And each time, the Romulan said snidely, the number of Jem'Hadar that you kill with but the use of one hand and a mek'leth increases. I believe it was 24 the last time. As he poured Klag a 12th Warnog, Cap couldn't help but smile. Klag told the story of his victory on Markan 5 the first several times he came into the bar. It was a huge hit the first time, but less so with each subsequent telling. Cap silently agreed with his customers. It was time for Klag to spin a new yarn. Klag took a long gulp of his drink, then turned toward the other patrons, who slowly quieted down. The dozens of conversations that made a wall of sound now faded into an equally solid wall of silence. Once Klag had a captive audience, when the only background noise was the clunk of drink containers on tables, he began to speak. I am the firstborn son of Merak, now the head of the house that bears his name. But Merak and his mate, my mother, Turilla, had a second son only one turn later, Dorek. That year that separated our births was as nothing to us, however. We were as inseparable as twins, though we looked nothing alike. Dorek inherited our mother's crest, where mine matches that of our father. To look at us, you would not know that we are of the same house, much less the same parentage. But to see us, anyone would know instantly that we were brothers. We learned to wield the batleth together. We mastered the Daktag together. We read together and studied all the great operas together. And we learned to hunt together. Our father's uncle was a one-eyed old razor beast named Nakri. As a youth, Nakri served under General Kurd, and later was a warrior in the service of General Kurla. After losing his eye in the battle against the Kinshaya, he left the Defense Force and became a professional hunter. For 7 years running, he won the competitions on Zakorg. A Triexian transport captain asked, "What's Zakorg?" The Romulan said, "A planet in the Klingon Empire, obviously, where they no doubt hold idiotic contests and outmoded activities." Klag smiled. "I would expect a Varul such as yourself to characterize the hunt as outmoded, Commander." Cap wondered if the Romulan would respond to the insult, but he seemed more taken aback by Klag's use of a Romulan curse than by the insult itself. Klag turned to the Triexian. "However, he is essentially correct. Zakorg is a home of some of the finest preserve in the Empire, and only the greatest hunters are even allowed to apply to compete there. Once, when I was 6 and Dorek 5, we were sent to live with our great-uncle for a season. Father was serving in the Defense Force, and Mother was recovering from an illness. It was their wish that Nakri teach us how to hunt properly. At the time, I had thought the notion absurd. We had both participated in the hunt, and each of us had taken down targ cubs and a few Grishnar cats. Not worthy of an adult, of course, but as good as our peers. The first thing Nakri said when we arrived at his estate in the Talthar Highlands was, 'I have seen your hunts, children. You are both fools and incompetents. I am embarrassed to call you kin.' We were outraged, with the petulance that only children can achieve, and tried unsuccessfully to defend our honor. 'None of the others in our class were able to bring down any targ cubs,' I wailed. 'And our Grishnar cats were the biggest ones,' Dorek cried. Nakri laughed at us. 'And is this record of battle supposed to impress me? I can train a Theban to hunt down a Grishnar cat.' 'Our instructor,' I started, but Nakri laughed again. 'I know your instructor. He is a lying Todzach who fools students into believing that his small accomplishments are other than that.' 'Other than what?' Dorek asked. Small. You are warriors. You are the sons of Marak. You are of noble blood, not common children whose deeds are to be measured against the unworthy. He fixed each of us with a one-eyed glare that would make Chancellor Martok envious. Starting tomorrow, I will teach you. You will leave this place one of two ways. One is as the best hunters on Kronos. He was silent for several seconds. Looking back, I know now that he was testing our patience, seeing how long it would be before we would speak out of turn. Being a youth, it was not especially long before I blurted out, "What is the second way?" He smiled. His teeth were sharper than the finest Tickleth blade, and when he bared them I knew a fear like nothing I'd ever felt in my 6 years. Dead, with dishonor, at the hands of an animal. "Wait a minute," the Triaxian said. "He would have killed you?" Again, Klag smiled. "No. Our prey would, if we failed. That was the challenge Nakri put before us." The human timeship captain glowered at the Triaxian. "Are you going to keep interrupting, or are you going to let him tell it?" Putting all 3 hands up defensively, the Triaxian muttered, "Sorry." Klag took advantage of the distraction to swallow the rest of his warnog. Cap, anticipating his need, had his 13th ready for him before he put the mug down. Giving the bartender a nod of acknowledgement, Klag continued his story. The next morning we were awake before the sun. We had been taught how to distinguish the scents of different types of beasts. Nakri taught us how to tell the specific breeds and genders apart. Once we could only tell a bird from a reptile. Now we could tell a ramjep from a taknar, a wham serpent from a gich, and a male targ from a female targ. We had been taught to be aware of the shifts in the wind. Nakri taught us how to read the signs that indicated that the wind would shift, or that it wouldn't. We had been taught to aim for the heart, regardless of the animal. Nakri told us the folly of such an approach, as the hunt was truly to procure food, and the hunter was best served by limiting the damage to the portion of the animal that were not eaten, such as the head and neck. We had been taught to throw small spears. Nakri taught us how to get in close with our dektogs. Once I tried to convince him to let us hunt with a batleth. Before coming to Nakri's, we had both participated in a Young Warriors batleth tournament, in which we came in first and second. "Which of you came in first?" the Boslik woman asked. Cap smiled even as Clyde's facial expression soured. That year, Doric did. But the previous year, it was I who triumphed. In any event, Nakri refused to let us hunt with those weapons despite our proficiency. The batleth was Kaelus's sword, he told us. It is to be used only by those who are worthy. You are not. After many weeks, however, Nakri decided that we were worthy. He declared that we would hunt on our own with batleths. We were sent out into the grounds before dawn to find Targ and bring it home in time for the midday meal. Armed with our dektogs and our batleths, we went forth. For hours we searched, trying to scent a Targ, but smelled only smaller, weaker prey. Nakri had sent us deeper into his estate than we had ever gone before. His lands were in a huge valley in Talthar, and this hunt brought us very close to the mountain face. Targ do not climb mountains, so if we did reach the base of the peak, we would find nothing. Then Doric taught wind of a Klongat. Turning to the Triaxian, Klag added, "Before you ask, a Klongat is a huge beast, the size of an adolescent Klingon, with immense strength, razor-sharp claws, and a vicious temper." When I too caught the scent, the first words out of my mouth were, "We should try to bring it down." Doric sniffed the air. "It seems very large, brother, and Nakri has forbidden us to hunt anything so large on our own." I laughed. "We are not on our own, brother. We are together." Remembering Nakri's words from our first day, I added, "We are the sons of Marak. Is there anything we cannot do?" "If there is," Doric said, "we have not yet encountered it." "Exactly. I am sure that, if one of us did try to hunt the Klongat on our own, that one would die. But we are together. We are strong." "But Klag," I could see that my brother had not yet found his resolve. I removed the batleth from my back scabbard and held it aloft, proudly. "I am the older brother, Doric. When father is away, I lead our house. We will hunt this beast." Slapping him on the back with my other hand, I said, "Do not worry, brother. We shall subdue the creature with little difficulty." Skeptically, the Romulan said, "Little difficulty? You were children." "Yes, Commander, we were. And my boast proved accurate, if only if one considers dozens of broken bones, Several blows to our heads, the tip of one of my brother's fingers sliced off, and half of my own hair ripped out to be little difficulty. But the Klongat fell. It beat us, it clawed us, it blocked our blades, but it did fall. How? In contrast to the Romulan, the Telspong was so wrapped, he dry sipped from his empty cup and didn't notice. Cap discreetly prepared another Saurian brandy for him. Only when we unleashed our batlets did we wound the creature. At first we stalked it, myself in front, Doric behind it. Doric swiped at it with his blade, causing the creature to turn toward him, seeing him as a threat. Then I threw my Duktag at its head, hoping to kill it with one blow. The Klongat was too fast. The blade struck only its shoulder, and that served only to anger it. It attacked me and might have killed me, but Doric grabbed its tail, giving me a moment to scramble out of the way, blood seeping from the many wounds its claws inflicted upon me. Then it yanked its tail out of Doric's grip and went for him. Unsheathing my batleth, I swung at it. We kept this up for some time. We were each distracted from the other, whittling away with our blades to provide minor wounds. Neither of us could get close enough to do any serious damage, but it was able to do plenty to both of us. Then, at last, Doric sliced open one of its paws with his Duktag. This disoriented it. It could no longer walk on all four paws, and its subsequent clumsiness allowed me to ram the two front batleth blades into its skull. Nakri was furious with us for disobeying his instructions, but he could not deny our victory. We dined heartily on Klongat that day, and that night, and the following day as well, for together... Cap caught a note of bitterness in Klag's tone. Doric and I could, indeed, do anything. The life suddenly draining out of him, Klag grabbed his warnog and downed the rest of it in one massive draft. After a pause, the Romulan sneered again. That's it? You drink 13 warnogs in exchange you tell us how you killed a stupid animal? It's hardly what I'd expect from someone who claims to put such great stock in storytelling. As he poured a third blood wine for the Klingon at the other end of the bar, Cap debated whether to interject. Technically, Klag had fulfilled his end of the deal. He had recounted a story. But Cap had been tending this bar for as long as it had been here, and he knew when one of his customers had more than one story to tell. Sure enough, Klag turned back around and regarded the Romulan with an unusually oblique expression. Very well, he finally said. He took a gulp of his drink, and then started his second story. When one discusses the noble houses of the Empire, it is unlikely that the house of Kogima is ever mentioned. That was true even before Kogima himself, the head of the house, was killed in a brawl at the Ba'alda'ar base tavern. The killer stabbed Kogima in the back, and so the warrior died not knowing who sent him to his death. Kogima had been accompanied by the house Gintak, a warrior named Kajo. Kajo did see the face of the Patak who killed his master, but was unable to find him. Instead, he returned to Kronos to tell Kogima's mate, Gosek, what had happened. Gosek was a proper Klingon lady. Though the house into which she had wed was of no great moment in the Empire, she still ran it honorably. Kogima had died before he and Gosek could bear any heirs. With her mate dead by dishonorable means and no children, she was also honorless. She had only one recourse, to take vengeance against her mate's killer. She instructed Kajo to accompany her, which he would have done even were he not sworn to obey all those of the house of Kogima. You see, Kajo was madly in love with Gosek, and had been since the day he first laid eyes upon her. Together, they searched the Empire. They used all the meager resources at the disposal of the house of Kogima. For years they traveled to different worlds, to taverns, to space stations, to starships, all in search of a man whom Kajo knew only by face. Traveling alone together for so long, they predictably became lovers. Kajo's passion was all-encompassing, but Gosek's motives remained inscrutable. She declared no love for Kajo, no passion for him, and she never once refused him when he asked to come to her bed. Kajo did not care as long as those requests were fulfilled. They continued to live off the house's ever-dwindling resources, but were never able to find the murderer. It seemed a lost cause, but Gosek would not surrender. Her honor needed to be served. With Kogima dead, it was all she had left. Kajo grew weary. Indeed, he was weary of the quest the moment it began, and that soon overcame his loyalty to the house and to Gosek. He implored Gosek to cease this insanity. They could forget their obligations to a dying, truly a dead house, and perhaps be farmers on some planet in a dark corner of the Empire. It did not matter to him if Gosek was forced to forfeit what was left of the House of Kogima to some other warrior, as long as they were together. But Kajo's importunings fell on deaf ears. Gosek called him a coward, and he relented. Many times Kajo could have left, but the twin obligations of his oath to the House and his love for Gosek kept him by her side as they continued their futile quest. Eventually, they arrived at Mempa 9. While dining in a restaurant there, Kajo saw two warriors, one of whom had a similar crest to that of Kogima's killer. Thinking this might be a relative, Kajo abandoned his heart of Targ, and without a word to Gosek, rose from the table and confronted the two men. When he asked their names, one of them said, "I am Klag, and this is my brother Dorek. We are the sons of Marak." "It was you?" the Triaxian asked redundantly. "Yes," Klag said with a smile. "And what's more, I recognized my questioner. I had seen him in the company of my father many turns earlier, before Kajo left the Defense Force in order to become the Gintak of a minor house. I looked at him and said, 'I know you. You are Kajo.'" Before he could reply, Gosek had caught up to us. She demanded to know who these people were. When Kajo told him we were the sons of Marak, Gosek went into a rage. "Is this Marak the one who has killed my mate?" Dorek stared at both of them. "Our father was taken in battle by Romulans. He is no doubt in Stovo Kor now." I added, "And the only people he has killed are enemies of the Empire. Of what are you accusing him?" Klag hesitated. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Well?" the Bosley captain asked. The human Starfleet captain next to Klag said, "You can't stop the story there." Shaking his head, Klag said, "But I must." Cries of irritation sounded throughout the tavern. "That's crazy! Was Marak the killer? Did Kajo or Gosek get their revenge? Well, if it wasn't Marak, who was it? Why didn't Kajo say anything if he knew Marak?" Klag shook his head. "You do not understand. The story cannot have a good end. If Marak was the one who killed Kogima without showing his face, then his sons would share in the disgrace of committing so dishonorable an act. But there was no proof. So it was only the word of a lowly Gintak of a minor house against two decorated officers from a noble one. If Marak was not the killer, if Kajo simply chose Dorek and me in a desperate attempt to cease their continuous travails and at last bring an end to their quest, either in Gosek's arms or in Stovokor, then Kajo would be dishonored. And what if Marak killed Kogima as a favor to his old comrade Kajo, to give Kajo a chance to become the head of the House of Kogima, mating with the woman he loved, and replacing a useless old fool who was driving their house to ruin? How was he to know that Gosek would insist on the right of vengeance against the killer of a man she never even liked, much less loved, or that she would carry it through to the bitterest of ends? The Romulan shook his head. "First a poor tale, then a tale with no ending. Were I the proprietor of this establishment, I would consider retrieving my drinks from your gut." "Were you the proprietor, Commander," Klag said with a vicious grin, "I would not be telling any tales in it at all. There would be no one here to tell them to." The Bajoran woman who sat on the other side of Klag asked, "Come on, Klag, the story has to have some ending." Klag drank some more Warnog, then slammed the mug onto the bar with a loud clunk. "Yes," he finally said, "the truth of the matter is, Kajo and Gosek left the restaurant on Mempa without another word. I never did find out what happened to them after that. Perhaps they searched the Empire still. Perhaps they found their farm. Perhaps they gave each other Mok Tavor to get out of their mutual misery. And perhaps they insulted someone they should not have, and were killed for their effrontery. However, Dorek's words to Kajo turned out to be mistaken. Marak was not in Stova Kor. He yet lived, a prisoner of the Romulans, who was not permitted to die. Eventually he escaped, and returned to Kronos." Once again, the Romulan sneered. "I doubt that any Klingon could escape a Romulan prison on his own." Before Klag could respond to this slander, a Rogilian hospital shipmaster asked, "If your father did return after your encounter with Kajo and Gosek, Were you able to learn the truth from him? Klag looked at the Rigelian for several moments, then at the Romulan, then at the Klingon on the far end of the bar. He turned to finish off the drink in front of him. Cap gave him a 14th moments later. There once, he finally said, was a great warrior, a proud man, the head of one of the finest houses in the Empire. He was nonetheless cursed with 2 fools for sons. The warrior tried to teach his sons well, but they were quite foolish indeed, and there was nothing to be done with them. He tried sending them to another great warrior to learn, but they were disrespectful of their elder and flouted his instructions at every opportunity, refusing to benefit from his wisdom. Instead, they hunted a creature they were too stupid to realize they could not defeat. By right of birth, they were able to study to become officers in the defense force, and so the warrior sent them to train in the vain hope that it would make honorable men of them. Somehow, they managed to get their commissions. They became adequate warriors, but nothing worthy of song. The younger fool worked his way up the ranks slowly, unable to distinguish himself. The older fool was promoted more quickly, becoming the second officer of a fine ship under the command of a scion of a noble house. Fool that he was, he had thought that he was on the path to honor with this appointment. In the meantime, their father, the great warrior, fought many battles, including one against the Empire's greatest foe. So great a warrior he was that the foe refused to allow him an honorable death, for they wished information from him. But the warrior would not yield, and he eventually made his escape. Klag said this last while staring right at the Romulan commander, who said nothing as he sipped his ale. Klag went on. The warrior's oldest son, meanwhile, thought himself fortunate. The first officer under whom he served was a fine warrior who stood for the crew. When she died in battle, an exchange program with the Federation brought a most odd replacement. A human. It was while serving under the human that the depth of his foolishness was revealed to him, for the captain under whom he served was not worthy of his house, his station, or his brave crew. Based on the flimsiest evidence, the captain provoked a conflict with the Federation flagship, and only quick thinking on the part of the human kept us from dishonorable death. When the human's tour ended, the fool was made first officer, and he was soon after visited by a Beck of no consequence, who revealed himself to be an agent of the captain's house. "Be warned, Commander," he said, "that your captain is a man of tremendous influence. You will obey his orders and serve him in all things, as your predecessor did. Any action you take not in accordance with the captain's wishes will result in you suffering a most ignoble fate, as your predecessor did." What, you might wonder, did this fool do? Was he a worthy son to his father, who stood against his foe and would not give them what they asked? Would he defy the words spoken to him by a secret assassin working for an honorless coward? Would he live up to the reputation of his house by showing that the path to honor will win the day over those who would besmirch everything that the Empire stands for? You can guess the answer, for time had made him a bigger fool than any could imagine. And so for 10 years, he remained the lapdog of this cowardly patak, covering up the captain's dishonor just as his predecessor had. So long was he trapped under this Todzaf's boot heel that his younger brother had achieved the same rank in due course. Meanwhile, the fool's father returned home from his captivity. He could have gone back to his life as a warrior, but as was his right, he chose not to reclaim his honor. He had fought his battles, and he had 2 sons to carry on in his name. But his sons were very great fools indeed, and they bickered and argued. The older son refused to see his father, thinking him a disgrace. The younger son would not do his filial duty and obey. So where once the two were inseparable, where once they were able to achieve great things together, now they achieved nothing. Eventually, the warrior died of natural causes. That only made things worse. The older fool had lost his arm in the same battle that claimed his dishonorable captain. Having at last achieved the captaincy that he had waited his entire life for, the older fool, in a misbegotten attempt to salvage his family's honor, had his father's arm grafted onto his own body. The younger fool excoriated him for it. He tormented his brother, even took up arms against him in a battle on behalf of the Order of the Batleth. Unable to allow his disobedience to continue, and with his position as head of the house now secure with the great warrior's death, the older fool was forced to remove his younger brother from their house. He had no choice, which only made him more foolish. Was he right to refuse to see his own father? Was he right to take arms against his own brother? Was his father truly a coward who killed another warrior without showing his face in a barroom brawl? Was his father truly able to escape the Romulans? Or did they let him go? And if so, did that disgrace lead him to avoid reclaiming his honor? And did any of it matter? With the very same arm that once belonged to his father, Klag raised his final warnog and drank it all down. A fine house has been sundered because two children who did not learn the lesson that Nakri taught them, that they were warriors, and that warriors do not obey blindly but do what is right. When they were children, the two fools knew that they could defeat the Klongat, even though Nakri told them they could not. Because though it is honor and duty that guide us, they should not shackle us. Duty to her husband compelled Gosek to continue her mad quest for Kogima's killer, when there was no reason why she should. Duty to his house compelled Kajo to follow her through to the bitter end. Duty to his ship compelled the older fool not to challenge his captain, even though he was an incompetent who deserved to die. And duty to his honor compelled the fool to shun his own father when he refused to reclaim his lost glory, and to cast out his brother when he did not follow the elder's lead. Regardless of the motives, regardless of the truth, regardless of the misunderstandings, regardless of the disobedience in the face of righteousness, regardless of the obedience in the face of dishonor, the result is the same, and the result is tragic, and little can be done about it now. Because the older fool realized too late that his father was dead, and he would never be able to speak to him, to be with him, to learn from him, ever again. Whether or not he was an honorable man, whether or not he stabbed a man in the back, whether or not he truly escaped from the Romulans, the fool, once again, and for the final time, failed to learn the lessons his father tried so hard to impart to him. At the very least, he was spared the sight of his son, a Klingon warrior, admitting to a room full of friends and strangers and others that he misses his father. With that, Klag rose from his stool, turned, and left the captain's table. Cap took Klag's warnog mug and dropped it into the dirty dish bin. As he did so, the noise in the bar started slowly to build, as the patrons realized that the story was at last over, and regular discussion could resume until such time as someone else was asked for their payment. An interesting story, the Triaxian said. The Romulan once again sneered. Your criteria for interest are considerably less exacting than my own. I found the first story dull, the second aimless, and the third maudlin. Well, I liked it, the Boslik woman said. Which one? The Telspong asked. All of them. The Bajoran Solar sailboat captain shrugged. There was just more fighting and killing and honor. The Klingon... Cap walked over to the other end of the bar, where the other Klingon still sat, brooding. Another blood wine? The Klingon shook his head without looking up. What about a story? Do you have one? Finishing his blood wine and then casting the mug aside, the Klingon rose from his bar stool and said, My brother just told it. With that, Dorek, son of Marak, left. The end. That was from Tales from the Captain's Table. The anthology came out in 2005. It's I don't know if the print edition is available, but the ebook edition is definitely still available. The other contributors include Louisa Swan, Christy Golden, John J. Ordover, Heather Jarman, Michael Jan Friedman, Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangles, David R. George III, and Peter David, who all wrote about the various and sundry captains. Thank you very much for listening and watching. Thank you for subscribing to the channel if you have, and please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't. You can find me online at DeCandido.net, at DeCandido.wordpress.com, and you can support me on Patreon, or Patreon, however the hell you pronounce it. I'm pronouncing it differently each episode, whatever. On Patreon at patreon.com/KRAD. Thank you again, and please stay safe.